What does it take to be an effective learner at university? To begin, the background you come from can have a drastic effect on your own expectations of tertiary education and your understanding of the expectations placed on you. Some of the examples of backgrounds that some tertiary education students have are high school graduates, mature age students, international students, students coming off gap years, and my personal situation, which is a change of degree. For example, high school graduates have a very different outlook on the way the content is taught to people who've done some tertiary education and have a better idea of expectations, etc. There are four main key concepts that may assist your understanding of what it takes to be a better learner. These are: what is academic culture? How is it different from what you've done? What can I expect? These are some common questions associated with these concepts. Resilience and well-being: what does this mean? How can I practice it? Self-regulated learning: what is self-regulated learning, and how can I do it myself? Writing academic text, such as how to structure and prepare for essay and response writing in the tertiary education environment. An alarming statistic based on an Adelaide study in 2009 showed that a 2004 survey of first-year students revealed that 60% of these first-year students did not feel adequately prepared for university. And I put it to you, how can you avoid this? The best ways to avoid this in terms of understanding academic culture is to know what's expected of you. You can do this through reading subject outlines, attending lectures, asking questions, and being an active learner. The expectations of the tertiary academic environment are the most basic knowledge required to become an effective learner. And in conjunction with applications of the more complex requirements, students can ensure that they get the most out of their time in tertiary education. This concept has been reflected in some feedback that I've received this semester, such as my PSYS Assessment 1 feedback and EDLE Assessment 1 feedback. This feedback represents somewhat a naivety to what is expected as a university student. There is an expectation that the tertiary student is an independent learner, or a learner who takes responsibility for their own learning. See, my understanding is that I didn't quite understand the assessment expectations, and this is an incredibly important part of being an effective learner. And my transition from HSC essay writing to university essay writing was poor. This all reflects a poor understanding of the academic culture at tertiary education, and reflects that how an in-depth understanding of this culture is needed to succeed. Resilience and well-being. The Australian government definition of resilience is that resilience is the ability to cope with unexpected changes and challenges in your life. Well-being and resilience are two intertwined facets of the life of a student, and understanding how to appreciate and promote well-being and resilience are important parts of being an effective learner. As such, mental health can assist the student not only in tertiary education endeavours they may take in, but the broader spectrum of daily activities that they may take on. There has been research that has found a correlation between poor mental health and poor performance / dropping out of educational environments from the Mental Health and Education Decisions by Conaglia in 2015. It is therefore incredibly important to understand that well-being and resilience are imperative parts of tertiary education life and the success of your tertiary education life. Moving on, as mentioned earlier, independent and self-regulated learning are two expectations of the tertiary student. Understanding what this means for you is a fundamental part of understanding how to excel in your role as a student and maximizing your ability to cognify course content throughout your time as a student. The concept of self-regulated learning can be a foreign one to many university students, and understanding what this is and how to properly act in a way that displays initiative when it comes to one's education provides the student with means by which to better process content individually. This leads into the concept of the expert learner as opposed to the novice learner. The difference between the novice and expert learner can be boiled down simply to the difference between rehearsing and understanding, a concept explored in this excerpt from Enhancing the Quality of Learning. Novice learners often mistake use of a few learning skills, mainly rehearsing material and occasionally making an outline, for expertise in learning. In contrast, expert learners strategically regulate how they learn, giving this as much emphasis as learning their subjects. Expert learners treat learning activities as objects of inquiry. They metacognitively plan, monitor, evaluate, and regulate their learning to optimize quality and performance. As you can see here, this feedback displays my tendencies to be a more basic and less regulated learner. Utilizing this feedback, I was able to make adjustments to my schedule in order to better use my time, in order to more accurately fulfill the role of a self-regulated learner. This stems largely from previous habits in my previous secondary education environment, and addressing this difference in learning expectations is an important step to being an effective learner, and applying the knowledge that you must be an expert learner assists the student in doing this. The last concept I'll be covering is that of writing academic texts. Writing academic texts in the tertiary education context presents a number of challenges for students, including new referencing formats and differing expectations of how information is processed, presented, and conveyed. These challenges must be acknowledged by the student in order to effectively convey knowledge in a way that assessors are able to appreciate. The main challenges I've had in my own transition in essay writing are the effective use of referencing and making an essay concise and well structured. In a tertiary context, it is advised not to speak around a subject, as is often the case in my previous personal environment, where in order to fill in words, you were able to speak around the subject instead of being concise and clear in what you were saying. This is depicted in my previous essays, which I have not addressed the course content adequately, and therefore have missed out on marks simply by not being straightforward with my responses, as well as missing the mark in terms of structure, therefore limiting the amount of information I've been able to convey effectively. To conclude, there are many factors that define an effective learner, and I've only gone over a few here in order to briefly summarize what I believe to be the most important pieces of information to consider when undertaking a tertiary education. I would say that the most important points are to be active and involved. This ties in with being an expert learner and being a self-regulated learner. Also, asking questions and taking responsibility for gaps in knowledge. This is also an imperative part to being a self-regulated learner. Looking after yourself, setting aside time for recreation, but planning this time and planning time for study. Sticking to these schedules promotes better well-being, and it allows you to more effectively learn the content. Take initiative to be an expert learner. Try to deeply understand content instead of just rehearsing it. Do all readings. Assess these readings and make your own judgments based off these readings. Utilize resources available to understand expectations. Resources that the university provides to you in order to understand these expectations, such as rubrics, course outlines, and the course outcomes, will verify your knowledge of the courses and allow you to know what you need to know. Speaking to your tutor to understand their expectations for your work is another important part of being an effective learner. I believe that utilizing all of these points promotes effective learning and gives the learner the best chance of success in the tertiary education environment.